The Lost Secrets of Prayer and Fasting, Insights from the Didache. What if I told you that an ancient document written by the apostles nearly 2,000 years ago reveals secrets about prayer and fasting that most Christians today have never heard of? This isn't some lost gospel or hidden conspiracy. It's a real first-century text called the Didache, and it provides an inside look at how the earliest Christians fasted, prayed, and prepared for powerful encounters with God. What they practiced could completely change the way you think about prayer and fasting. So, why did they do this, and more importantly, what can we learn from them today? Stick around because what I'm about to share might revolutionize your spiritual life. And I'm here to equip believers with the knowledge to fast and pray effectively.
What is the Didache?
The Didache, also known as the Teaching of the 12 Apostles, is an ancient Christian document written in the 1st century, possibly between AD 50 and 100. It is one of the earliest known writings outside of the New Testament and serves as a manual for Christian living, church practices, and spiritual discipline. Though not included in the Bible, the Didache was highly respected by the early church and provides valuable insight into how the first Christians understood prayer, fasting, baptism, and daily faith in Christ. Essentially, it is a discipleship guide that shows how believers in the time of the apostles lived out their faith. Understanding the Didache can help us bridge the gap between the modern church and the practices of the early followers of Jesus. This document not only highlights doctrinal beliefs but also emphasizes the importance of daily Christian discipline. The instructions given within the Didache reveal how early Christians viewed community, charity, and devotion to God, giving us a blueprint for a deeper spiritual life. Additionally, the Didache provides unique perspectives on moral teachings, including the difference between the way of life and the way of death. It instructs believers on how to live righteously, avoiding sinful behavior, and embracing a lifestyle that reflects the teachings of Jesus. With its practical applications and direct guidance, this text is an invaluable resource for any Christian looking to enhance their spiritual journey. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Didache is its emphasis on practical Christianity. It teaches that faith is not just about belief but about action, how one lives, serves, and worships in daily life. It guides the early Christian community in decision-making, emphasizing holiness, hospitality, and righteousness. While modern believers may rely primarily on the Bible for guidance, incorporating insights from the Didache can provide additional historical and theological depth, enriching our faith journey. Fasting as an act of love. One of the most powerful teachings in the Didache is that fasting wasn't just about personal breakthroughs, it was an act of love. The apostles wrote, "This is the way of life. First, love the Lord your God who made you. Second, love your neighbor as yourself. Third, do nothing to anyone else that you wouldn't like to happen to you." To keep these teachings, they advised believers to bless those who spoke badly about them, pray for their enemies, and, here's the surprising part, fast for those who persecuted them. Did you catch that? They didn't just pray for their enemies, they actually fasted for the people who persecuted them. That's a different level of spiritual maturity. It's easy to fast when we are asking God for something we want, but the early church fasted for people who hated them. Jesus said in Luke 6 verses 32 to 33, "If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you?" Fasting isn't just about receiving from God, it's about being transformed into His image. When you fast, do it from a place of love, not obligation. This teaching reminds us that fasting should be an expression of genuine faith. Instead of viewing it as merely a discipline or tradition, we should see it as a way to intercede for others and demonstrate Christ-like compassion. Imagine the impact if Christians today adopted this practice, fasting for those who wrong us, instead of resenting them. It would completely shift our perspective and align our hearts more closely with God's. Furthermore, fasting as an act of love can also lead to greater spiritual insight and clarity. When we fast for others, especially those who hurt us, we open our hearts to God's will and perspective. This sacrificial act strengthens our faith and helps us grow in patience, forgiveness, and understanding. The early Christians understood that love was not just a feeling but an action, and fasting was one of the most profound ways they demonstrated their commitment to living out Christ's teachings. Fasting and baptism. The Didache also reveals something fascinating about baptism. The apostles instructed that both the person being baptized and the one performing the baptism should fast beforehand. They wrote, "Before baptism, both the person doing the baptism and the person being baptized should fast. If other church members are able, they should fast as well. The person being baptized should fast for 1 or 2 days beforehand." Think about that for a second. Today, people get baptized whenever they decide, often without any preparation. But the early church saw baptism as so sacred and serious that they fasted before entering the water. Not just the person being baptized, but also the church community who were standing with them. Why? Because baptism is a public declaration of leaving behind the old life and stepping into a new covenant with Christ. They didn't take that lightly, and neither should we. Fasting before baptism signifies purification, preparation, and a solemn commitment to God. It is a way of aligning oneself spiritually before making a significant covenant with Christ. Many churches today have lost this practice, but reinstating it could add greater meaning and reverence to the baptismal experience. The importance of communal participation in fasting before baptism also highlights the interconnectedness of the church body. When one member of the community is undergoing a transformation, others stand alongside them in spiritual support. This unity and collective intercession could strengthen the church and reinforce the shared commitment to faith. In addition, fasting before baptism provides an opportunity for deep reflection and prayer. It allows individuals to prepare their hearts for the immense spiritual significance of baptism. This act of devotion ensures that baptism is not treated as a mere ritual but as a transformative event that marks a believer's new journey with Christ. The early church understood the power of spiritual preparation, and modern Christians can benefit from reclaiming this practice. Fasting is about devotion, not legalism. Now, before I share the final insight from the Didache, which will challenge how you think about when you should fast, I want to offer you something to help you grow in your understanding of fasting. I've put together a free fasting starter kit that includes fasting tips, prayer points, and recommended supplements to support your fasting journey. You can grab it using the link in the description. And if you really want to dive deep into biblical fasting, what it is, what it isn't, and how to do it correctly, fasting isn't about following a strict set of religious rules or checking off a spiritual to-do list. The early church understood that it was about drawing closer to God with an undivided heart. Fasting should never be done out of guilt, pressure, or an attempt to earn God's favor. Instead, it should come from a sincere desire to know Him more deeply. Many people struggle with fasting because they view it as a burden rather than a privilege. But when we shift our mindset to see fasting as a tool for spiritual growth, it becomes less about deprivation and more about transformation. The early Christians embraced fasting not as a mere duty, but as a joyful and essential part of their faith. Throughout the Bible, we see that fasting is always tied to seeking God's presence. Whether it was Moses on Mount Sinai, Daniel in Babylon, or Jesus in the wilderness, fasting was a way to intensify spiritual focus. When we fast today with the right heart, we align ourselves with this ancient and powerful practice, experiencing breakthrough and renewal in our walk with Christ. Why the early Christians chose Wednesdays and Fridays to fast. The early Christians took fasting seriously. So seriously that they fasted twice a week, every week. But here's the interesting part. The Didache says that the Pharisees also fasted twice a week, on Mondays and Thursdays. Since Jesus had rebuked them for their hypocrisy, the early Christians didn't want to have anything in common with them. So instead, they chose to fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. They weren't just fasting for tradition's sake, they were deliberate about everything they did. They saw fasting as a way to humble themselves before God, consecrate themselves, and keep their spiritual focus on their divine calling. The lesson here? Fasting isn't about legalism, it's about devotion. The early church wasn't trying to oppress people or check off religious boxes. They were pursuing a deeper relationship with God. Fasting on specific days was not about ritual but about purpose. These designated days reminded believers to refocus on God, engage in prayer, and maintain spiritual discipline. Making fasting a regular part of life can provide structure and consistency in our spiritual walk. By choosing Wednesdays and Fridays, the early Christians demonstrated their desire to distance themselves from the legalistic practices of the Pharisees and embrace a Christ-centered devotion. This practice reinforced their commitment to holiness and allowed them to set aside time for spiritual renewal consistently. Today, adopting such a disciplined approach to fasting can help believers cultivate a deeper connection with God and maintain spiritual clarity amidst the distractions of daily life. Modern fasting and practical application. When it's time to fast, many people like to abstain from things like sugar, coffee, or even social media. You might be surprised that I don't recommend fasting from social media. Are you shocked? Click or tap the screen to find out why, and I'll see you in the next one.